There is no better. Hey, do you have any idea how many people a day come up and down Substation Road? Yeah, I don't either. But a few weeks ago, Father Mark and I were talking about how can we possibly evangelize? And then I got to thinking about this, and then I remembered one quote, presumably coming from St. Francis. And he said something to the effect of, preach always, and sometimes use words. And it dawned on me, if St. Francis was alive today, he'd probably say something like, well, why don't you just use that sign up there in front? And so with that in mind, I thought, well, maybe this is a way that we can kind of get started. And I thought of some little quips, sort of like little Twitter feeds that we could kind of set in sequence as a way that we can evangelize. And you may think, well, who is our audience? And of course, our audience is anyone who happens to pass by our church. The unchurched, the previously churched. But I'm thinking even the Protestants and the Catholics, you know, those St. Ambrosiacs that live around here, because they all need to know us and to know us a little bit better. So I thought that we would first start out the first week with something kind of like a little odd. Like you know something is coming, but you're not exactly sure. So I thought for the first week we would just start with, let us introduce ourselves. Just give them a little bit of time to think about that. Where are we going? Kind of let them get used to the fact that we are going to be using the sign. The second one is going to be Catholic in the Greek tradition. Now you may recall that maybe 20 or 30 years ago, our church was known as the Greek Catholic Church. But our bishops decided to change that because they were afraid that too many people would think that we were Greek, as in identity, as in ethnicity. And they wanted to get the fact established that we are an American church, that we are Byzantine by tradition, which is the reason why they changed their name. But we are still Catholic in the Greek tradition. So then we would move on to, hey, wasn't the New Testament originally written in Greek? Now this one's important primarily for our Protestant friends, because there was always this movement to try to find a younger, older, more authentic Christianity. You know, the thought was that Catholicism somehow lost its way, that they needed to go back to the original church and find out the way the original Christians believed, the way they practiced. And then to cement further this whole concept of our Catholicity, the next week it would read something like, the Pope is our Papa too. Getting across that whole idea that we are truly and authentically Catholic, just a little different. To take this one step further, then we would move on to, Lenin is not our bishop, but he shares in our communion. Again, a demonstration of our Catholicity. And then the following week we would have our first Catholic SAT question. And it would simply read, Peter is to Roman as Andrew is to Byzantine. Now you may not realize it, but our church is apostolic. It goes all the way to the apostle, but the apostle Andrew, as opposed to the Roman church, which identifies itself with the apostle Peter. The following week, did you know? Peter and Andrew were blood brothers. And they were. They were actually physically brothers. Again, highlighting the closeness, this relationship that exists between the Western and the Eastern Church. The following week we would have, did you know Andrew was the first called of all of the apostles? In fact, that's what he is called. Andrew, the first called. The following week we would have Byzantine, check. Catholic, check. And American, check. Again, because that is our certain specific mission in this world. to be authentically Byzantine, authentically Catholic, and at the same time, authentically American. We are not an ethnic enclave, but we are a true, existing American church. Moving on. Byzantine. Christianity in Trinitarian color. Now, here I wish to highlight two different things. First and foremost is that the Eastern Christian churches, more than the Western church, like to highlight the Trinitarian aspect of the one God. But also to demonstrate the fact that we are not afraid of color. If you go into most Protestant churches or even most modern Roman Catholic churches, it seems like they're afraid of including color into their decorations. But it is God, the true light, that allows us to see every single color of the rainbow, every single color of the spectrum. Then we're going to get a little bit more particular, a little bit more specific to our church itself. Caution. Married priest inside. Church may implode at any time. What I wish to highlight here is the fact that what most people think of as being Catholic is not completely being Catholic. That the Catholic Church is much wilder, much more wonderful than they could ever imagine. And that maybe they just don't know everything. Byzantine thought. Mary is the God-bearer. Now that's special. Last week when I was watching the Super Bowl, I was remembering the Council of Ephesus. And the reason for that is that the Council of Ephesus is where Mary was proclaimed not as just the birth giver of the humanity of Christ, but also the birth giver of God himself. She bore God within her body herself. Jesus was not two people, a divine one and a human one. He was one person. And when this decision was proclaimed through the Council of Ephesus, it was reported that there was so much singing and parading throughout the entire town of Ephesus. It was sort of like after the Super Bowl in Seattle. But a very important theological distinction and a very important belief among us Byzantine Christians. And to highlight that even further, we would then go on to say something like, Jesus is a good boy. He listens to his mother. Now the reason why I like this one is because Protestants do not believe that we should pray to Mary or the saints. But what they don't realize that in true Hebrew tradition, that the queen was not the first wife of a king. She was not the favorite wife of the king. She was the mother of the king. And in fact, the way the whole system worked was the king was so occupied with the daily politics within the community that when people had a personal desire, a personal petition, they would go to the queen mother. And then she would bring that before the king for his attention, for his ruling. And we truly believe that as we pray to Mary, we pray to the saints, that these are then brought to Jesus Christ. No different than if you asked a friend to pray for you. Because we truly believe that the Theotokos, and indeed all of the saints, are still alive. And that they are still part of this communion of saints. We are all in this together. And to highlight that even further, the next week the sign would read, the saints marched in, and we are in that number. When we participate in the liturgy, we participate in the communion of saints. They are participating with us, which is the reason why we see them here. And then to let them know a little bit about what it's like on the inside of the church. Our liturgy, it's like playing peekaboo with the Father. And of course, that's to highlight the fact that we keep opening and closing the drapes, and we keep opening and closing the doors, and I keep coming out and going back in and all of that stuff. Our liturgy, over 200 scriptural quotations or your money back. Can you believe it? Every single liturgy has 200 plus scriptural quotations strung together. And they claim that us Catholics are not scriptural in our orientation. I find that unbelievable in and of itself. Our liturgy, singing all of the hits of the first millennium. Again, highlighting this whole idea that people are trying to find that true, authentic, early Christianity, the one that has somehow become lost. Shock and awe. Yeah, that's our liturgy too. Because awe is what the entire liturgy is about. That is the attitude that we take during the entire liturgy, as in we cannot believe it. It is so beautiful, it is so wonderful, we cannot take it all in, and we surely cannot understand it. Okay, and we may have gotten a little off kilter on this one. Angry, get incensed here. But again, that goes along with that concept of what happens within the church. So if they come in, they may think back to some of these things, and they're thinking, oh, I get it now. And along those same lines, Christianity, standing for what is right, and rarely sitting down. And that highlights the fact that we seem to have pews, but we don't like to use them very much. You may curse the darkness, we choose to light candles. And then the following week, in the world on the outside, out of this world on the inside. Again, highlighting the fact that we are not participating in the Last Supper. This is not a reminiscence of the Last Supper. This is reminiscent of the heavenly liturgy, the everlasting liturgy, the liturgy that will go on for all time, that indeed is going on for all time. And along that same line, now serving the supper of the Lamb, and you're invited. Now, you may not understand exactly where this one is going because you're not Protestant, you're not an evangelical Protestant, and you're not consumed with the book of Revelation. But in the book of Revelation, chapter 19, verse 9, we read, "And the angel said to me, write this down. Blessed are they who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb." And some of these are just for us, sort of like this one. Weird cross, weird steeple, wait till you meet our people. And another one just for us, kind of goes along with the crazy way that we get along with our bishops and our metropolitanes and everything else. Disenchanted with organized religion? Try us. We are as disorganized as religion comes. But fundamentally, and this is what this entire process is about. Perhaps when you were watching the Super Bowl, somewhere in the middle of the second quarter, you saw the rock band U2 come out. And they were offering their brand new song for free if you downloaded it during the Super Bowl.
I don't know.
And the name of that song is "There Is No Them." And the next line in their chorus is, "There is only us." In today's gospel, we heard the story of the Publican and the Pharisee. And the Pharisee was praying as if there was only a him and a them, that the publican was somehow distant from him. Another person, another being, another way of being. But that is not what the Christian message is about. That is not what we as Eastern Christians are about either. The eminent Orthodox theologian, Metropolitan John Zazulus, talks about what kills a church. And he says that you cannot kill a church by ruthlessly suppressing it, as the Romans tried to do in ancient times, and as the communists tried to do in modern times. Even secularism cannot kill the church because it will survive. But the one thing that can kill a church is self-marginalization. The church that refuses to be part of the world. The church that refuses to be in the world. The church that refuses to see the other person as not of them, but as part of us. And with that in mind, we would end with one final sign, meant for the Baptists that exist right across the street from us. And that sign would simply read, "Hey Baptists, want to come over and play?" And of course, we would serve a great and fantastic feast. And what would we serve? Why, lamb, of course. Glory to Jesus Christ.